Hello there, welcome along to the seminar. This is the latest in the PTC series of presentations about the ArborText IsoDraw product. Today we're going to be looking at callouts. And in our agenda, what we're going to be doing, a quick introduction, what are callouts, the different callout types and where we use them. We're also going to be looking at what we need to consider when we're using callouts in the illustration, the different illustration styles and standards and so on. And then we're going to complete the presentation with a demonstration to show you the kind of tools that we have available in IsoDraw to help make the process of applying and managing callouts much easier. So what are callouts? You may know them by a different term, especially here in the UK where we know them as annotations. Essentially, a callout is a way of identifying a component on the illustration, whether it be a letter, a number, or a piece of text. A callout may have a leader line which grounds it to the item, and the line may have a dot or an arrow at the end. If you're working to an industry standard, for example to ATA or S1000D, then the format of your callout will be specified and you cannot deviate from that. However, if you're not sort of constrained by any standards, then you've a little more flexibility in how your callout appears and how you can apply it. So when we talk of callouts, there are really just two distinct types, either a direct or an indirect style. And as the term suggests, these refer to whether we add a direct text label to the illustration to identify the component, or we add a reference label which then refers the reader to an accompanying list or a paragraph of text. There are pros and cons, of course, of both methods which we need to consider. However, again, if you work to standards, you have no choice regarding that method that you use. Here, for example, at the top of the page, we have a direct annotation method where we indicate the output shaft, the threaded insert and switch directly on the illustration. It's all complete, self-contained and so on, so nice and neat and compact and easily presented. But of course the downside is, of course, if we need to present 2 or 3 different languages, then that needs to be managed. We may have to have then 2 or 3 different layers. We need to remember that if an item moves, to move the items on the other layers as well. So a little more management involved in this particular style. At the bottom of the screen, the indirect approach with the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on. Those then refer the reader out to a piece of text. So it's the text in this particular case which will be updated, not the illustration, which makes it nice and easily managed. The callout is applied then wherever we want to identify a part to the reader. Now, a typical example, of course, is a parts catalogue where the reader wants to identify a part on the illustration and then find its entry in the parts list. In an electronic parts catalogue, the callout may even have a hotspot associated to help the reader navigate from the illustration to the text. Usually it's the job of the illustrator to manage the creation of these hotspots too, so we'll have a look a little later at how we might be able to make life easier here for you. In assembly instructions, there will often be callouts to help the reader follow the process that's laid out in the text. Of course, there are now many situations where assembly instructions are purely pictorial, and so the document relies heavily on the illustration and the callouts to describe the sequence, so it has to be nice and clear. And in service manuals, the illustration supports the text in describing a process, and so the callouts link the illustration to key stages within the manual. So the callout needs to be clear, well laid out, and that's often not as easy as it sounds. So giving consideration to the style, the number, the placement of the callouts is all very important. And just as we discussed in previous presentations, especially when we talk about magnifiers, a badly annotated illustration detracts from its purpose. So first of all, there are a few formatting styles we need to consider. It's often good practice to add a white shadow, for example, to or what we might call a halo to the line, just to help relieve it from the illustration. We'll see some examples of this shortly. This really helps the reader determine exactly what it is we're drawing attention to. So we try not to cross other lines. Very rarely try to cross too many lines of the illustration, or certainly not other callout lines. we'll use a dot or an arrow to identify the particular part that we want to draw attention to, and as a rule a dot goes onto an item, an arrow goes into it. Of course these rules are there to be broken, just as all rules. Ideally we try not to have too many callouts on the page, and that's not as easy as it sounds either. It means some planning before we begin the illustration. It may also depend on who commissioned the illustration. The parts compiler may tell you how many items are to appear on the page, and you just have to make the best of it. I've been there before. However, of course, if you're in control of what appears on the page, you can try to consider what needs to be annotated and perhaps create the illustration to suit. When we actually add the callouts, we try to follow a sort of standard each time throughout the document. So your house style may dictate that your leader lines are either vertical or horizontal, or they may radiate out from the center point. We try to keep them as short as possible, again, like I mentioned. Of course, it may be you have a style maybe starts from the 1 o'clock position, goes around clockwise or anti-clockwise. It's good practice actually also when we think about this to actually apply the callouts to a separate layer. Now that means that the same illustration can be used for different purposes. That layer can be switched off to assess progress, or perhaps even coloured so that we can help distinguish the lines of the illustration from the lines of callout. So let's have a look at some examples of everything I've been talking about. This is a really nice example of nice short leader lines. It's a nice compact illustration. A lot of space around there, but the leader lines are kept nice and short. In this case the text is quite bold as well, so it helps us to pick out the item. Over here, for example, on the left, you notice also that the halo effect that we talked about is applied to item number 33 in our case, and the line where it does cross the illustration is relieved so that it's obvious it's not part of the structure in this case. When we talk about different annotation styles, on the left here, for example, you'll notice first, of course, that the leader lines are coloured. It's a way of helping the reader to distinguish between the lines of the callout and the lines of the illustration. The other point to notice here is that the leader lines don't actually touch the item they point to. There's neither a dot nor an arrow in this case. Again, this helps actually to avoid confusion by having lines crossing important parts of the illustration, and it keeps it nice and clean. On the right hand side of the screen, you'll actually notice it in this particular case, it's the text which is coloured. Again, another way of just identifying the call out to make it separate from the illustration. In this case the leader lines have got dots on the end, and you'll notice that, again, just to break the rule I talked about earlier on, it's the dot actually touches the component rather than goes onto it. You'll notice also that in our case here the annotation line approaches the text either vertically or horizontally. Another way of just keeping it clear, keeping a separate line structure, a line style, if you like, from the illustration, keeping it easy to read. On the left, for example, on this particular example on the screen now, you recognise that we've got both dots and arrows, and a mix of the two in this particular case. Notice that, for example, here item number 2 has a dot which goes onto the item, a nice large item, so it's easy to drop an annotation line directly onto the card. But item number 3, for example, here has an arrow which leads up to a part. It's a bolt in this case, so a dot onto it would just obscure the part altogether. So we've used a mix of the two styles to suit the illustration. You'll also notice here as well that this particular house style uses a number in a circle. Again, just a way of sort of ring fencing, if you like, the annotation, the complete annotation. On the right hand side of the screen, an example of how we might use a style for maybe a service manual or service procedure. In this case we've used A, B, C. That then will refer out to a block of text. A, loosen the bolt. B, loosen the second bolt. C, drag the adjuster, or whatever the sequence may be. And in this last example here, a parts illustration, here we've kept, of course, the number of items on the page to a minimum to help create space. In this particular case, though, what we've done, you might notice here, for example, the annotation starts over 100, 101. So we've got the opportunity perhaps to be able to break out the illustration onto a number of different sheets rather than trying to cram everything into one sheet. So a particularly complex assembly, it might be an opportunity to break out to a number of different illustrations so that we can create the space, we can keep it nice and open to make it easier for the reader. So let's see how we do all of this with IsoDraw. We've got here, for example, a typical illustrated sort of parts catalog kind of situation, an exploded view, which we need to apply some annotations to. Let's just have a quick look at sort of what the current process might be, using either IsoDraw, Adobe Illustrator, CorelDRAW, whatever the application may be. And let's do sort of the current sort of, if you prefer, way. Take a text tool and add a piece of text. In that case, item number 10 here. And we'll take a line and we'll track that leader line onto the item there. So there, item number 10. If I now need to apply another one, what I'll do usually is select the item itself, duplicate it, and then I'll just drag it away, constrain it to the grid in my case, so that everything's nice and neat, and then draw another line to the next item, and then we'll just change that, double click, make that 11, and so on we go around. There is of course a downside to this, in that if the position of an item needs to change, I now need to move two items. The text and the leader line are both separate components. So if I need to change them, bring them down to the bottom side of the illustration, for example, I now need to move both the line and the piece of text, and then they both go together. So with IsoDraw now, we have a feature, a tool called the Callout tool. Here it is on the toolbar. And if I use this tool to now add a series of annotations to the illustration, look what happens. So if I click and drag, just as if I was drawing a line, there's item number 1, 2, 3. You'll notice, of course, now, first thing is that as I drag, the number is applied sequentially. So all I need to do is go around and identify the parts in the correct order that I want to apply the annotation to. The other thing about the Callout tool is that the item I draw, if I select here item number 3, this element, this annotation is a complete element. Look, as I move, as I drag the item away, it's the text and the line which go together, and it makes it very easy if I now need to change the orientation of that annotation. Look, it's just one, as if it's just one line I was moving. The caption at the end goes with the lines I move it. So it's really easy to reorientate the illustration and to manage that call out. In my particular case here, of course, I've used numbers. It might be, of course, we need to apply a slightly different style. Maybe your annotation style has a bubble. Maybe you don't have arrows, you have dots. So from my callouts menu here, if I just double click on the word normal, I can edit that style very, very easily. So let's just start by maybe changing the line to apply a dot at the end rather than an arrowhead, and let's put the text maybe in a circle. So you see a preview. Let's say OK, and now anything that uses that same callout style has been changed. You'll notice also, as I just drag that item in, that the halo we talked about, so you zoom in and so you see, the halo that we talked about, look, has been applied automatically. If we did the same process with an Illustrator, CorelDRAW, those kind of applications, we'd need to add a second line underneath the first, so a white line below a black line to achieve the same kind of approach, the same style there. That of course means that if I move the line, the black line, I've got to remember to move the white line as well. So we've achieved quite a lot with just one line style. Okay. We can do all sorts of other things, of course, with this callout tool. We've used straight lines, of course. Here it's not a very complicated illustration, so it's nice and easy to apply nice, short and compact callouts. But I could, for example, go ahead and add a dogleg, for example. So it's very easy to amend the illustration as I go along if I need to, if I find out that I'm getting a bit cramped with space. Now the next thing, of course, we need to deal with is modifying the sort of the illustration as we've got it now. I can guarantee as soon as you finish a 30-40 part illustration, the author's going to come along and say, well, in actual fact, look, I removed item number 2, and you're going to have to resequence the whole illustration. By using the callout tool, we've made that slightly easier. Let me take item number 2, and I'm going to hit the delete key now. And I get a dialog. Do I want to renumber the callouts? In my case, yes, I do. 2's gone, so now item 2 is over here. 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we can resequence very, very easily the whole illustration from any point along the point from 1 to 10, whatever. The next thing, of course, you may want to do is say, well, okay, in my particular instance here, I just went through and I applied in a particular order, 1 to 6. Let's go and add a few more, maybe. I have to remember, of course, that as I do this, that to apply them in the right order, because my callouts are being applied sequentially. So let's add a few more here. Of course, it might mean that if I make an error, heaven forbid an illustrator ever makes an error, but maybe we do. But I need to go ahead and change this sequence. Or it may well be, of course, that the author maybe changed his mind and wants a different sequence now. So we need to be able to handle that as well. So let's take a different approach, and we have underneath the callout tool we have a renumber tool. Now all I need to do is decide which is going to be item number 1. So we'll click. Let's start at the top position here, the 12 o'clock position, and we'll click. This then becomes item number 1. If I hold down the Shift key, this then will be number 2. We'll have this still as number 3. Let's go 4, 5. Now these two bolts here, of course, are both the same type, so ideally they would both be 5. So if I just flick over to the Alt key, I can have this as 5. Back to the Shift key, 6, 7, 8. Let's have these two here look as 9. Oh, do that whole sequence there as 9 and 10. I beg your pardon, 8, 9 and 10. So let's click into a free space. I'll get a dialog. Do I want to apply that numbering? I do. And there we go. We talked about electronic parts delivery, parts catalog delivery, and the fact that that involves now having to use hotspots. As I've been creating this illustration, adding the annotations, because I've used the callout tool, if I just double click on the style again, you notice an option at the bottom of the dialog here. Use these callouts as hotspots. It's automatically checked. It's checked by default. So I've actually been building in hotspots to the illustration as I go along. It's not a separate routine now to have to go back and apply an overlay. So if I now just activate hotspots on my illustration, you notice as I click and hold, I get that feedback from the illustration. This is now a hotspot. Of course, we don't know what to do with it yet. That's for preparation later on. But the file is at least now built with those hotspots in place. Switch that on. Just a very quick tip. Maybe you've got some guys out there who are already using these tools. Let's decide. Maybe I want to increase the number. That I don't want to be 9. I need that to be 11. But the last thing, of course, I want to do is have to go and resequence everything. Got a quick tip here. If I hold down the Control key on the keyboard and use the up and down arrows, I've got one of the extended keyboards on a laptop keyboard. So Control and an up arrow will now nudge these callout numbers up. Control and Shift will do it in 5s. Of course I can go up and down, so both ways. And I can actually do it with a selection of callouts as well. So let me take a whole series here, and we'll use that same keystroke. So they all nudge up by 1 or 5, whichever. Just a quick tour. We could also use different styles on the same illustration. Let's across, I've already created a couple of different callout styles here. Let's take a different style and choose the callout tool again, and I can now apply letters as well as numbers. These again are sequentially added, so as I go A, B, C, D rather than 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me just go back to that normal style. I want to remove the shape so that it's easy to see what we've done there. So I can now apply a complete different style. Not only is it now alpha rather than numeric, these have a circle, these have an arrow, whereas the number, which is now no longer got a circle but has a dot on the end. It's very easy to mix and match these styles. And if we take that a little stage further, if I, for example, double click on that letter style, again there it is, look, there's the line and the shape that we've added. We can change its case to be maybe lowercase rather than uppercase. But we have an option here to add either a postfix or a prefix. Now that gives us a couple of tricks that we can use. Let's take another line style. In this case here I've created one called detail, and all this does in my case now is it adds a prefix, and as I click I just drag and it drops on the detail A. Click again, detail B, detail C. So these may now refer individual details from the 3 callouts which I added just a short time ago. Very easily done, just by adding a prefix as detail in space, and then of course the A is the sequential part. Then we added a shape which was a rectangular box. These of course are still editable, so you know we can move these around to any part on the page. But if I were to delete one, let's for example say I no longer want detail A to be here, so we'll first of all remove the detail A, and I'll get a dialog that says do I want to renumber, and I do. So I could remove detail A here. Yes, I do want to renumber, and this will be detail A, this will be B. Let's just think a little bit further about how I might create using that prefix postfix kind of style. Let's create a new callout style. In fact, we'll base it on the style. Let's create a new style here. I'm going to call this ATA. So now, for example, rather than a prefix, I could add a postfix, and in my case, I'm going to make that a 0. So now all of the numbers will increase by 10. Say OK. Let's select that style again now. Go back to my callout tool. And now, as I apply the numbers, 10, 20, 30. So a number of different ways there, look, that we could use that prefix postfix. We can mix and match styles to create all kinds of different, cover all kinds of different situations really. We've dealt with, of course, with a situation here where we've manually applied callouts. The illustration that I have in the background here is actually being created from CAD process model. We brought the model in from an IGES, in this particular case an IGES model, right the way through, created the thick and thin line illustration. But there is a lot of information still associated with that model. Let me start and clean this up a little bit and introduce you to a new method. I'm going to use this selection process dialog here to be able to easily remove all of the callouts in one swift move. and I'm going to just fire up here the object window, and let's collapse that structure. There then, look, is the structure of this particular illustration as it came through from the model, from the process model. We've got a structure based on the top level item, which is the sensor, down to its sub-assemblies with their components, and in some cases down to sub-assembly level. With that detail already in place, surely the last thing I want to have to do is go through and now manually annotate the illustration. So let's apply some callouts based on the structure I have. And from the drop-down dialog at the top of this window, we'll come down here to generate callouts. Here now I can choose even the level that I go to, so I might say, for example, that anything beyond level 2 is not a spareable item, so I ignore those parts. I'm going to go up to level 3 in my case, but I could easily choose all levels or just a specific level. I can choose the callout style, so from all of the styles I've created so far, I could say if it's going to be a letter, if it's going to be A, B, C, D, if it's going to be our ATA standard, 10, 20, 30, 40. Let's just keep it simple for now and we'll use the normal style. I'm just going to keep the leader lines nice and short, so we'll just shorten that detail there. And we can now sort the callouts. We can choose to either apply no sorting, in which case it starts at the top of our object list and works its way down, or we can apply them clockwise or anti-clockwise again, depending on your house style. Let's keep it simple again, and I'll say no sorting. And save. So now you'll notice all applied. IsoDraw is not sure, of course, what your house style is, whether you create a vertical or a horizontal leader line, whether you radiate from the center. So it's applied them and laid the annotation out in the square around the edge. That allows us to find those parts nice and easy. You'll also notice, for example, that this particular part in the center seems to have 2 annotation lines to it. Callout, of course, 1 and 17. 1 is the whole assembly, and 17 is the particular part number. So it allows me now to be able to manipulate this slightly. So what I'm going to do here is just drag these around, and maybe, of course, I need to apply some kind of bracket line here. So we can see that 1 is the overall assembly, and then items 17 and 12 here. And 13 on all parts of that assembly. Okay. Let's just remove those one more time and have a look at the different options again. And let's perhaps assume that rather than me decide, or the list decide, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe somebody else has already made the decision. Maybe we've got an author or a compiler that has already been through this model, this structure, and decided that the body wants to be 1, that the cap wants to be 2, the screws need to be 3. That's often, I guess, more often the case. So we're going to rely on this structure again to annotate to, but rather than just simply apply a set of numbers and then using the callout tool rearrange those numbers, let's rely on the fact that we've got an author doing a job for us, and we're going to export out that object list that we saw. Here it is in the list. It's right down toward the bottom. We're going to create an object list and we'll give that name. Save it. Now let's go back then, and we're going to edit that list, that text list that has been created here, and we'll just open that in Excel. So here we go. Just let's open the columns up a little more so they're easy to see. And what it's done is exported out both the ID and the name, which in that case are both the same. But what it allows me to do now is go along and say, let's start and apply perhaps a series of numbers in our case. So we're going to say this is going to be item number 1. Cap assembly. I don't actually want the assembly cap itself annotated at all, so we'll remove that from the list. Cap itself will be 2. Let's go down the list. In that case, 3, 4. This one just apply. Right. And in our case, the screws, of course, are both the same part. Let's have the same part number, so they should have the same annotation 9. The same with the bolts; they should be the same. Let's remove the actual assembly one as well. In fact, I'm going to remove a few just so it's obvious what we're doing here. Both plugs in this case, of course, will have the same part number as well. 12. Just please by removing annotations back. We don't want these annotated, the numbers very well. So we'll save that. Just the dialog just to remind us that we are saving it back to a text format, which we know. And let's go back to the illustration. In the objects dialog again now, we go through initially the same process. So we say generate callouts for objects, but in this case now we tell the application we've actually got a list. So let's select that list. And we want to use the annotation that appears in column 2. It's this column here. Now, of course, this time we want to select all levels because we don't know at what point those numbers apply. So we select all levels. We can choose the callout style again. It could be a number or a letter or text. And we want to use text in this case. We want to use the number that appeared actually within the file, not a number that's sequentially generated by IsoDraw. So we'll use text. And then we'll just keep those nice and short. Say OK. So, back on the illustration now. There are the 2 screws that we looked at, each with the same part number. Body, the O-ring and so on at the back have no annotation at all because they were removed from the list. And the plug items, again, the same part number, item 12. Now, again, in our case, item number 1 was the top level, we left that in. So just drag that down. Cap was 3. Was 13. Pretty small. Now all we have to do is just rearrange the layout. That's the important one to do is making illustrators redundant. So we have to leave them something. Okay. So I hope that's become a little more clear now how we can use the tools built into IsoDraw to make our annotation sequence that much easier. So I hope that that demonstrates effectively how we can apply and manage callouts within IsoDraw, and I hope the presentation's been of value. Thank you very much for your attention, and if you need any more information, please contact Pete and Sid.